Hey, today I'm going to teach you how to identify what your customers care most about so that you can solve the pains that they're willing to pay for. So the process is quite simple. All you need to do is to talk with your customers and understand your customers. So step one would be here on the left side, the explore phase, where you would explore their pains, their interests, and their goals. So you could identify and create a dictionary of problems and things that matter for them. Okay, so as you talk with your customers or with your potential customers to understand what they need, you're going to identify their problems. Now the thing is, they could tell you about their biggest problems and you could like search for those, but you're still not sure if everyone or like a wider majority of your customers have that issue. Okay, so in the next step, what you want to do is prioritize the problems that matter most to them. Now, depending on the amount of customers or prospects you have available, you have, in my opinion, two choices. If you don't have a lot of customers that you can talk with, then you could map those problems by understanding how frequent they are and how important they are, so that if you have problems that are happening quite common and they're high pain, then you want to solve those first. So that's one way to go about it. Another way to go about it is to present your customers or your prospects after you've talked with them in a separate type of interaction, maybe through a survey, um, the set of problems you have heard about from them and ask them to prioritize against each other. So essentially, you want to give them pairs of problems, of two problems, for instance, like multiple pairs of twos, and have them choose the one they feel strongest about that's more relevant for them. And that way, at the end, you can have a list of prioritized problems that you can then choose to solve. Okay? So that's kind of like in a nutshell. Now, I want to kind of contextualize more of why this process is meaningful. Okay, so in the first phase, you're essentially forming that dictionary of problem. You're forming an understanding of what matters to your customers. Okay, so here's a lot of different problems. You don't really know why they happen, how big they are, and so on. You might get an understanding of them, but you might not know the actual importance of them. Now, in the second phase, where you prioritize and you segment, you want to figure out which which of those are the most important, and if you're anyways sending out a survey, or you question a lot of people, what you can do is to think about the different behavioral segments of your customers, or the different let's call them segments. Okay, because you could have um, let's take a gym membership, for example. Okay, for a type of customer, what matters most is the cleanliness. Okay, for another customer, what matters most is the amount of gym equipment that there is in the gym. Okay, and maybe there's another customer that wants, for instance, the ability to shoot videos. Okay, now the thing is, some of these customers are willing to pay more to get their problem solved than the others. Okay, we all know the 19-year-old gym rat that wants all the equipment in the world, but might not be able to pay for a subscription of a gym that encompasses all of that. Okay, while we can have, for instance, the majority of the members, or high-paying customers willing to pay an extra price to get a gym that's really clean, so you can afford solving that problem. Okay, because you don't want to go around solving problems that nobody wants to pay for, or nobody can pay for because they don't afford it. Okay, so this is in the second step. You want to identify the top priority problems and identify what matters most to the customers that are willing to pay you the most for solving those problems. Okay, so now at the end of this second phase, what you have is you've got your, let's say, high paying segment, your medium paying segment, and those that don't really have more to pay you for, or maybe they're just freeloading. Okay, now once you know that, okay, here's my biggest problems. Okay, like let's say the biggest circles are the biggest problems you want to hear about, and then you have frequently mentioned problems across the different segments. Okay, so you could say, okay, I know three top problems. I've got the dark blue one, the yellow, and the orange, which are essentially your top three problems that you can solve for. Now, when you talk with your customers, when you're exploring the pains they have and so on, usually you don't get the chance to really dive in deep to each of the problems they mention. Okay, because at the very beginning, you just want to hear about who they are, what problems they have, and you can only begin to tap into why these problems matter to them. But if you, and this is optional, okay, but if you feel like you're not comfortable with the amount of understanding you have on those top priority problems, what I highly advise you to do is to go back to your customers and talk with them about those high importance problems, okay? And you might be a bit reluctant. You might be like, well, my customers don't really want to talk with me about that, or my prospects don't really want to talk with me about those problems. But actually, if they are key problems they care about in any context whatsoever, then they will be highly interested to talk with you, okay? And on top of that, if you offer them some kind of an incentive, like a gift card on their favorite coffee place or a gift card on Amazon or things like that, from my experience, they're really willing to talk with you. And some, I've had the pleasure of talking with some champions, which are like high paying customers and having the major pains we're trying to solve. They were willing to talk with me for free just because that problem was so intense. They wanted to tell me everything about it so that I could be informed enough to solve for it, okay? And that's essentially the fourth step, the last step. The fourth step is you become so informed about the problem, the customer that has it, when it happens, why it happens, what are they currently trying to do to solve it, and why it failed, so that you can, first of all, solve it, and second of all, advertise it, because now you know how to phrase the problem, how to talk about it, how to contextualize it so that you can attract attention to the solution, okay? So that's essentially how you solve it. Now, I want to show you an example of Uber, okay? So let's say that on the left side, we've got a set of problems we're hearing about when we're talking with people that are trying to, that are using the taxi service, okay? So if you've been using the taxi service in the past, you know that essentially you have to either go to a taxi station to find a taxi, or you have to call a taxi to get a taxi at your place, okay? Now, where I live, taxi stations are quite far away, okay? So walking there is not an option. It's so painful or like so time consuming that I don't want to deal with that, okay? So already that's a major pain that I have. Now, calling is also taking a lot of time, and nowadays me sitting on a call with an operator waiting for them to confirm the amount of time it takes for the taxi to come, they have to ring and advertise it. It takes a lot of time. Back in the day, it was taking a lot of time, okay? And nowadays I don't think it's acceptable, and we are seeing Uber have success because people don't find it acceptable anymore to waste that time. Now, someone might say, hey, you know what, I want to smoke in the car, like I'm a smoker and I want to feel like I'm relaxed, or like smoke a cigar, I want to chill, okay? That's a problem that some people might have when they're traveling by car, when they're being driven, okay? Another problem could be, I want to listen to music, I want to like bang out my best songs and just vibe. Someone else say, I don't want to carry cash with me, okay? It's just too risky for me, or maybe I just forgot to grab some cash. Nowadays we live in the digital world, so of course I might not have cash on me, okay? Someone else is saying, you know what, I feel like I want to drink something. Maybe I want to like have hydration, like some water. Maybe I want to drink some wine, right, when I'm being driven. So that's another problem that you might hear about from people traveling with taxi, like they want more service, okay? um, Someone might say, you know what, it actually smells in the taxi. It's like, taxi cars are super old. I feel like they're not hygienic enough for my taste. The cars are old, and when I take a cab and I go to an event, I feel like it's not presentable enough. I'm not presentable enough for that specific occasion. And finally, some might say, you know what, I just want peace and quiet. I don't want people to talk with me when I'm driving. I want like that chill atmosphere, relaxing atmosphere. I just want to maybe focus on my work or something similar, okay? Now, you can most likely identify that some of these problems are some things that Uber is solving for, and some of these problems are not being solved for, right? So for instance, if someone wants to smoke a cigar or listen to their favorite song, well, maybe if there's, yeah, so let's, yeah, maybe listen to their favorite song, maybe they can pull out in Uber. But smoking a cigar or drinking alcohol is most likely not encouraged in Uber, okay? But it could be done in a limo service, okay? So see, there's services for different problems, right? So yeah, so as you're talking with your customers to understand what they care most about when you're trying to solve for an experience of traveling from point A to point B, you might hear about these problems, and now you talk with them again or prioritize to figure out what matters most to them. And my interpretation from this list I provided you is that they want to shorten the time it takes between them deciding to want to go somewhere and them actually having a car pick them up. They don't want to walk to that station. They don't want to call and sit around on the phone. They want to make sure the car is new, it doesn't smell bad, it's like presentable when they get there, and they don't want to worry about cash, right? They don't want to risk having cash on them. Maybe it's I don't know, poor neighborhood they're going into, or simply they forgot to grab some cash from the ATM, and they don't have the time to deal with that right now. Okay, so when you're like converging, when you're like identifying those problems, you can like essentially get to the most important ones. Okay, so that's kind of like how they would be able to figure out their value proposition. I'm sure that there's other elements that Uber has when it comes to their value proposition, but I'm just like trying to simplify the concept for you. Okay. Now, um, essentially, when you're prioritizing problems, I told you that you want to have those pairs of twos being compared, because it's easier for us to choose between A and B, between B and C, and then continue to do that until we've exhausted all of our options. So here you see, time spent versus listening into the music. Like, I care more about saving time when it comes to like driving somewhere, because I'm usually not necessarily in a hurry, but I don't want to just waste time being driven around the city, because like I'm not looking for a limo service at this point. I'm looking for getting from point A to point B in a safe, clean, and fast enough way. Okay, so like I would choose here, I would choose being fast. Okay, in between being able to smoke in the taxi or have a clean taxi, I would definitely choose being able to have a clean taxi. Okay, so I would solve for that. I wouldn't want my taxi to smell like cigarettes or cigars. And finally, if I had to choose between not having to pay cash or drink something while I'm being driven, well, depending on the occasion, I might want to drink a glass of champagne, but ideally, I just don't want to worry about all the time having cash on me or going to the ATM and so on. I just want to pay with my card um, and deal with that fast. Okay, and then if you think of it, you have like top three problems, let's say, but then you were thinking about, okay, what matters most to my customers, right? And I would say that what matters most to them is getting from point A to point B, but I think that you couldn't really have a successful value proposition or product if you're getting people from point A to point B in a very ugly smelling car, right? Like, you couldn't, like, Uber would not be successful if their fleet would not be clean, okay? Or if you couldn't pay cash. Okay, so you might get to the top problem, but then you might realize that actually, for my value proposition to be meaningful, for my minimum viable experience to be meaningful, I need to figure out how to solve the pain that my customer has, which is getting from point A to point B in a fast way, in a meaningful way, right? So you can see, I want to get fast there, I want to have a clean experience, and I don't want to pay cash at the end of it, right? Now, why I added this on a timeline is because usually your problems don't just happen in a vacuum, okay? Usually what your customers' needs are, or when you have a big goal, the pains that they experience with the current solution is happening in a continuum. And why this matters is because you can be more focused when it comes to understanding when do those problems happen in the manifestation of that experience, and also what is my minimum set of problems I'm solving for to be able to stand out, okay, to have a perceived value that is important enough for them that they're willing to pay for it. Okay, and that's what I wanted to also share with you. The reason why these pains matter, and generally understanding what your customers care most about, is because whenever you do a sale, you want to make sure that the value they perceive from getting your product or service has to be bigger than the price, okay? So you want to note this down. The perceived value of my product has to be bigger than my price for the sale to happen, right? Like, you wouldn't pay $2 million for a $100,000 car, but you might pay $10,000 for a $100,000 car, right? You would say, okay, this is a steal because the perceived value of that thing, of that product, is bigger than the price, the price I have to pay. Okay, there's some things that if you change the price of them at some point, they don't become the value is not high enough for that to be worth it. Okay, so this is why pains matter. You want to increase the perceived value. You want to increase the perceived value, and um, and ideally you can also increase the price. You don't have to worry about lowering the cost. You just have to make sure that the perceived value of your product, what they perceive, is valuable and more valuable than the price they have to pay, right? The money you're charging them for, or any kind of effort you're charging them for. Okay, so now I also want to leave it with this final thing. Solving a problem, so having the perceived value being bigger than the price, I don't think it's enough for a sustainable business. Okay, and a lot of times we can focus on solving the problem, or at least creating this perception that we're solving it, but then when they actually come to experience the product, when they are having the realized value, right, then that your product might fall short. So you don't want to just over promise and under deliver. You want to promise, make sure that they understand your promise, that it's bigger than the price you're asking for, and that once they get to experience your product, it's bigger than what they were expecting in the beginning. Okay, so you want to like surpass the expectations that already got you the sale, because this first part gets you recurring customers. Okay, this one gets you customers, they get to pay you, and then if you have the actual value, the actual experience is actually better than what they were expecting, then you get people to continue to come use your product or buy your product, because essentially you're delivering more value. Okay, and the final thing is you want to make sure that your cost is smaller than the price you're charging. I've seen and continue to hear about, businesses failing because their costs are too big, and it's either because they haven't optimized how they're solutionizing, how they're delivering that solution, or simply because they haven't been dealing with a problem that's meaningful enough for their customers so that they can charge for it appropriately. Okay, so essentially that's it. Again, to summarize, if you want to solve the most high important problems, you want to first understand the wide variety of problems that are relevant for your customers, for the outcome they're trying to achieve. Okay, and then identify which of those matter most to them. Now, if you're interested in more content like this, let me know, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.